Our next presenter is Dr. Lorna McDermott. She is an educator, a teacher for over 20 years. She is a associate professor at the College of Education at Townsend University. She is co-founder and administrator of the United Opt-Out, a national group dedicated to reclaiming public schools from corporate-driven reforms and providing assistance/resources for parents, teachers, and communities to end high-stake testing. She has published numerous research-based articles in peer-reviewed journals, newspapers, blogs on current educational reform policies, including Common Core. She lives in Baltimore County and with her two children, 6 and 8 years old, who attend public schools.
Am I on?
Yeah, you are.
Am I on? Yes. Oh, I'm gonna have to hold this thing. Is that okay? No, it gives me something to hold. That way I won't get nervous. I want to thank Howard County PTA for inviting me to join in this panel. I've been excited about it and was geared up for it in December, and then the snow came, and I've been obsessing about it ever since. So I'm going to sleep very well tonight when this is over. When it's over with. As you just heard, I've been in education both as a K-12 classic teacher, special education, regular education, and as a teacher educator for about 25 years. And in the last 15 years, my research has been focused largely on democracy, social justice, and high-stakes testing, standardized testing, going all the way starting back with No Child Left Behind, forward. And in the last 3 years, including my work with United Opt-Out, has been focused on both the new rounds of standardized testing with PARC and SBAC, which we'll talk about, and the Common Core state standards. So I want to start with, do I push that? Hopefully you all got a copy of this. I'm not going to walk you through it, one, because it takes at least 15 minutes to do it, but there is a video of it at the website on the back page that you'll see if you want more information. But I want you to be looking at it or following along as I do talk, because I will be sort of jumping in and out of it. What my interest has been in the last several years has been looking at the corporate interest and involvement from which the Common Core has sprung. I will have to agree with Mr. Brickman on one thing, that I agree that this is not a creature of the federal government. I do believe that the federal government is just merely the delivery boy of the corporations that have an interest in nationalizing our testing regime and nationalizing our curriculum. And they worked in tandem with one another to manufacture the illusion that this was state-led and teacher-developed and, you know, kid-approved like Cheerios or something. So who exactly wanted the Common Core to begin with? You've got 3 organizations that are on your chart, and the 3 that really created this were CHIEF, the National Governors Association, and the Chief Council of State School Officers, otherwise known as CCSSO. So I'm just going to talk briefly about what each one of those are, because you walk in here and go, who are they? What is this? What is this crazy stuff? Well, CHIEF is, according to their website, created in 1996 by the nation's governors and corporate leaders. CHIEF is an independent, bipartisan, nonprofit education reform organization from Washington, D.C. that helps states raise academic standards and graduation requirements, yada, yada, yada. Some of the key players that are involved with CHIEF are Lou Gerstner, who's one of the co-founders, and he was the former CEO of IBM. Craig Barrett was the CHIEF chair, also the former CEO of Intel Corporation. And they are funded, CHIEF is funded largely by multinational billionaire corporations, a lot of whom are sponsored by an organization called the American Legislative Exchange Council, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But some of the major funders of CHIEF include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Boeing Company, Brookhill Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, Chevron, Cisco, DuPont, JP Morgan, Intel, IBM, the Joyce Foundation, MetLife, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, State Farm Insurance Company. There's a whole list. I'm just touching on a few of them. The second group that I mentioned, the National Governors Association, who they are, according to their website. is a bipartisan organization of the nation's governors which promotes visionary state leadership and shares best practices and speaks with collective voice on national policy. Founded in 1908, NGA is the collective voice of the nation's governors and one of Washington, D.C.'s most respected public policy organizations. Through their corporate fellows programs, corporations can donate money in exchange for greater influence over policies, including those in education. So again, there's a lot of money to be had through the National Governors Association. And third, the CCSSO, this is the third in the triad that created Common Core, according to their website, is a nonpartisan nationwide nonprofit organization of public officials who head departments of elementary and secondary education in the states, including District of Columbia, the Department of Defense Education Activity, and 5 U.S. extra-state jurisdictions. CCSSO provides leadership, advocacy, and technical assistance on major education issues. Some of the key donors and players in CCSSO include Chris Minnick, who's the president, and by the way, Chris Minnick, who's the president, was a former employee of Pearson Publishing, who are going to be helping to administer the PARCC testing around the country and in particular in Maryland. Some of their corporate partners at CCSSO include Advanced Ed, American Institute for Research, Data Recognition Corporation, ETS, which is now part of Pearson, McGraw-Hill, Apple, Intel, Wireless Generation, which is going to be, for many states, the collector of the data that your children produce from the Common Core nationalized testing from PARCC, and College Board, which is now headed by David Coleman, who was one of the founders and creators of the Common Core. Okay, oh, and I forgot to mention the American Legislative Exchange Commission. This is important to mention. It's not a lobby group, it's a front group that brings together behind closed doors multi-billionaire corporations like Exxon, Coors, Intel, Microsoft, from the food industry, education industry, health industry, all the billionaire key players. And they meet behind closed doors with politicians from various states, and they create what are called model bills or model legislation that these state legislators then take back to their state and call it their legislation, but it's been largely supported and funded with the interests of the corporations that would like to see bills passed that serve their interests. So there's a disproportionate number of the corporations that have helped to fund the billions of dollars that go into Common Core are members of ALEC. And it seems clear to me that they have a vested interest in the products that are going to be manufactured to deliver Common Core and the testing and the data collection. So why? Why Common Core? Actually, I think Maryland ranked, it's number 1, 2, or 3 of the states in the country. So I don't know how poor the standards were before Common Core came in, but I believe that Maryland was ranked actually pretty high according to some research. We'll have to compare notes. But I just want to mention this really quickly. This is a quote from David Coleman. The Common Core state standards, he said, aim to change everything. And these are in his words. And for innovators and entrepreneurs, they may. With the simultaneous implementation of Common Core state standards in 46 states in D.C., there is the potential for a truly national market. So who wants these standards are the people that are going to be profiting off of your children and off of the schools by delivering the goods that are no longer going to be delivered to you through state departments of education or through educators. They're going to be delivered to you through these testing companies and these edutech companies and the nonprofits, and I can put that in quotes, that are funded by the corporations to deliver these things to your children. So who wrote it? Well, according to many studies, and I have all the data for all of these things, none of this is conjecture. I found all this out. That crazy chart was just, some people do crossword puzzles or yoga. This is what I do. And I sat up and I just opened every single link to every single organization and went through their tax files and their records and their, and all their information and found out, it's like playing the memory game. You flip over the 2 cards and you find the matching and you find the matching. And I started seeing these names over and over and over again. I was like, wait a minute. I saw that guy over there. What's he doing over here? And I started keeping track. And when I was done and I stood back and I looked at this, I went, oh my gosh, this is really what it's about. So one of the things that I found regarding who wrote the standards, they were test makers from the College Board, testing publishers from ACT, Achieve, which again, was one of the founders of the Common Core, Student Achievement Partners, which was founded by David Coleman before he became involved with the College Board. So those are the folks who wrote the standards, not teachers, not teacher educators. I would suggest even that within colleges of education, I would garner a bet that those who were representative of colleges of education, as Dr. Stotsky pointed out, were probably also somehow in relationship to the corporations that are going to be benefiting from these expertise. I wasn't invited to be one of those at the college event. All right, in 2 minutes. 2 minutes on testing. Wow, I can't wait till we get back to this with the questions that you guys are going to have. Common Core State Standards is a package deal. And what do I mean by a package deal? I'm reading a quote from Jose Wilson, who's an educator activist. People who advocate for Common Core miss the bigger picture that people on the ground don't. Common Core came as a package deal with new teacher evaluations, high-stakes testing, and austerity measures, including mass school closings. Often it seems like the leaders are talking out of both sides of their mouth when they say they want to improve education, but need to defund our schools. It makes no sense to have high expectations of our students when we don't have high expectations for our school system. And so I want to wrap this all up for you really quickly. What is the Common Core? This is in summary. Pearson Publishing spent large sums of money lobbying for legislation to create new tests, new curricula, and new teacher evaluations. And then they waited on the other end with their hands out, receiving millions of dollars to deliver the new tests, new curriculum, and new teacher training needed to implement the policies for which they lobbied. Achieve, Foundation for Excellent Education, and the Business Roundtable and testing companies like ACT pushed for and wrote the standards to reflect their own educational and business interests, micromanaging the outcomes of education for children toward their own agenda. Nationalized testing and standards have been a part of the corporate government dialogue ever since No Child Left Behind. Efforts to push for more and newer testing methods via the PARC are led by Bill Gates along with In Bloom and other tech-savvy, data-interested corporations. Most of these corporations are members of the American Legislative Exchange Council, who have their own vested interest in having access to big data. The governing boards for PARC and SBAC are political and economic footballs for the politicians who serve on their boards. The federal government uses abusive, intrusive, and invasive techniques, ironically in the name of equality, to serve the interests of the corporations with whom they partner. Additionally, some of these corporations are being paid handsomely to collect the over 400 points of private data embedded in both Common Core and the new PARC testing to go along with it. And when our schools, our children, and our teachers fail to meet the expectations set forth in the aforementioned corporate interests, hedge fund corporations and billionaires will line up to fund charter schools and other forms of reform designed to privatize our public schools because there are profits to be gained there. These same private interests promise to fix the problem, which of course they created in the first place. This despite research that has shown again and again how and why such reforms have failed our children. It's not rocket science, it's simple, it's money.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I actually looked at this map up here